And welcome back to another edition of the MatStats Show, along with Glenn Gormley and Kevin Hazard. I'm Jason Bryant. Today, we're talking about postseason qualifications on the wrestling side of things, statistical influences and such with, as we say, the Moneyball of wrestling. Kevin Hazard, the Grand Poobah of wrestling. Glenn Gormley, our resident statistician. Glenn, we are looking at all things in the dual meet season right now, but of course, the talk is that we're looking towards March, though, if we're still 2 months out, and qualification is a key topic on why wrestlers may be missing matches, they may not be missing matches, or scheduling, and things are the way they are. We're going to touch on some of those things today as it pertains to qualifying for the NCAA championships, the NAIA championships, and across their respective divisions. So, Glenn, take her away.
Okay. The name of this show is what I've learned so far from researching is to win the Stanley Cup, you have to make the playoffs. The owner of the Washington Capitals said that, and that's a big thing in our sport too. In order to win the Nationals or place the Nationals or score team points, you got to get there. So our big thing is what do we do here, and how do these qualifiers shake out? Okay. Just like we always do, this is a stat show. I feel like a number. You guys have all heard that before. I'm not going to sing the old Seeger song for you since I'm not good at singing.
We don't want you to sing ever again, Glenn, by the way. I want you to know that.
I can't sing, and the only thing I will sing is Rocky Top when we beat Bama.
So why do you try to sing? Why do you use song lyrics if you can't sing? Well, sorry. Anyway,
why did I wrestle if I was no good at wrestling, right?
You are grumpy today, Jason.
Okay.
I am not grumpy.
No
I've got the day off, and it's raining today. It's not snowing up here in the wonderful world of Frozen Land. Although I think the entire state is in mourning as we record this the day after the Vikings lost in the playoffs again. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so
the rest of the state is grumpy. I'm okay.
Okay, yeah, it seems that way. So anyway, I have to say this every show. The opinions expressed in this show do not necessarily reflect anything the NWCA thinks. And what we all say here, we don't necessarily all agree on everything. Okay, so it's an opinion driven, it's a statistical driven show, and sometimes opinions come as a result of that. Okay, the national tournaments are the focal point of collegiate wrestling. The NCAA Men's Division I Championship are easily the most attended. It's the Super Bowl of college wrestling. Everything else takes a back seat. Even the Olympic qualifiers and the Olympic themselves, even though they have a higher level of talent, are not as big for the American fan as the NCAA Division I tournament. MatStats has been a strong proponent of including NCAA women's wrestling at the same time, same arena as the men's D1. We would be the only sport in NCAA to do that. Okay. Now, wrestlers qualify for the respective national tournament in conference qualifying tournaments. Okay. It's the primary way to qualify for national tournaments. In men's D2 and D3, the top three in each of their 6 qualifiers in each weight class go. In men's D1, there's a pre-allocated amount of qualifiers based on the conference weights and then at-large bids. NAIA men have 9 qualifiers. NAIA women have 5 qualifiers, and for the first time, it is no longer an invitational. Yeah, Jason was about to say it's something that changed in 2023. And NCAA women have 4 regionals with the top 5 qualifying in the past, now top 4 qualifying. Okay.
Yeah, so what the women's have is they have a regional structure just like Division III does, slightly modified. Again, that is it's an emerging sport, so the NCAA schools compete in what is the National Collegiate Women's Championships, not yet with the big blue disc on it. This year, this summer, the NAIA announced that women's wrestling would be a championship sport. So as the screen says, it says it was an invitational. It was an invitational for a couple years up until now. They hit the number of teams required to be championship status. So the NAIA will have its first ever women's championship officially, not an invitational, an actual national championship crown in 2023 in Jamestown, North Dakota. So that's how that works. And their qualifying structure, very similar to the NAIA men. Glenn alluded to the 5 conferences. They're similar to D1 in the way that they assign qualifications per conference, but they do it based on a ranking versus a metric of RPI and coaches rank, etc. So then they go to a pool. The NAIA men also do this. They got a pool of conference at-large bids, and then at the end they'll have national at-large bids. So there's two ways. If you crap the bed at the conference tournament, you still have two opportunities to get in through whether the conference says you're an at-large bid or the national committee says you're an at-large bid. So that's how the NAIA men and women will qualify.
Thank you for that, Jason. Jason is the guru of all information on this sport. Whenever you need to know something, you ask Jason Bryant, and he knows. Okay. On talking about the Big Daddy NCAA Division I championships, there's 330 wrestlers, 33 in each weight class, selected number one based on pre-allocated spots per conference per weight class, and then at-large selections based, for those who didn't qualify. The pre-allocation is based on your record, your opponent's record, and your opponent's record. Okay.
That's also commonly referred to as a ratings percentage index, and RPI. You hear it a lot in basketball. In hockey, we have what's called a pairwise, which includes an RPI component. Basketball now heavy on strength of schedule and a net rating. So, if you want to talk about, the math behind it, every sport's doing math. A lot of math. This is Glenn's wheelhouse. Math and stats. This is something that, every sport's pretty much got it now.
Can I ask
I'm pretty much
Can I ask a question here? And it's pretty for Jason. I know that that it's a 3-prong, and it's you got to have a 70% winning percentage, X amount of matches, blah blah blah. Do they take into account at all your finish the year before at the Nationals?
No.
Did they at one time do that?
They did.
Okay,
the NCAA. So back, and I want to say it was 2007. I think it was 07. Either 06 or 07. I want to say 07 in Tahoe was the convention that really this all blew up, and it blew up in a good way, because there was and I will get in arguments with this, not arguments, but message boards discussion. This is where the fan base kind of gets a little like, what? This is why they're missing matches, is because they're trying to game the formula. Well, that may be true in some respects, but the old system I felt was much more, and I hate to use this term, but it was corrupt in a lot of ways, because you had coaches making those, and it was a backroom deal, because these seeding meetings and these coaches meetings to get wild cards to the championships through their conferences. Conferences got their bids based on a god-awful formula of historical data that sometimes it based as how many wrestlers reached the round of 12 in like the previous 4-year cycle, which to me was stupid, because you would have wrestlers that weren't even competing anymore impacting a freshman or a sophomore. It's like, okay, however this guy did at Central Michigan 3 years ago is impacting how you are at Northern Illinois this year. That to me was ridiculous. And conferences like the ACC could never break through, because you'd win a conference championship, and then, oh, well, guess what? You get the number 1 seed at nationals. So the seeding was a little weird, but getting there. And then there were situations where you'd leave, national champions, not national champions. Craig Henning was an NCAA runner-up at Wisconsin. The next year got left home because he had a bad Big Ten tournament, and his whole season was a wash because he had one bad day and didn't place top 8. Now that was also in the 12-team Big Ten. Now we're at the 14, but at the same point, one bad day. So, we know this in the smaller conferences where you had one bad day. That's it. And, bigger conferences you could place. But now you have one bad day. You have your whole season to fall back on, which I like at the Division I level. But the old way was, and they had coaches saying, oh, well, we'll pick this guy at this weight because we have a better chance. I remember 174 in the CAA where they opted to take 4 174-pounders because the weight was hollow, because everybody was running away from Ben Askren. Well, one wrestler was ineligible to go after having a post-tournament infraction, so he was gone. And those other 3 CAA 174-pounders won a combined 0-6. Meanwhile, a future NCAA finalist got left home, Ryan Williams, who finished behind Don Fish and Charles Griffin, who were All-Americans that year. So and then there, of course, the one I always like to throw out there, and he's a college coach now, but Caleb Flores at Northern Iowa was 9-21 and got an at-large bid, or got a wild card out of the West region, because there was arguing amongst the coaches on who's going to go. So It was in 1 year. Luke Smith from Central Michigan takes third. The guy that beat him in the semis that made the MAC finals didn't go, but Luke Smith got the wild card. So it takes away a lot of that backroom dealings. And it's okay. You know what? Your best guy, your best seasons, you're gonna go. There's a lot of guys that don't get left home now that are 24-9. You know, your fringe guy gets left home. Well, okay, you're arguing about a 32 and a 33 seed getting left home, okay? That is a much better system than what we used to have when we had Craig Henning is sitting home. Ryan Williams is sitting home. I think it was Travis Schufelter, BJ Patton, one of the Nebraska guys, sitting home. Tyron Woodley sitting home. That's not good for wrestling. So the system we have now, as much as it's created some nuances and people learning how to game the system, because let's just say whenever there's a new rule, we like to find the ways to exploit it. But anyway, that's kind of the point where Kevin's talking about historical data no longer being used. So that's a long answer to a short question, Kevin. So if I'm the returning NCAA champion, that doesn't mean I'm going to be the first seed if I'm 11-14 and I get into I finish 8th in the Big Ten. Your current season's the deal.
Makes a lot more sense. I just remember that it was in my head, and I'm looking at the criteria. I said, I know this has changed, but I couldn't find out when it had changed. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And some people disagree with that. Some people think that the previous placement should play a role. I think it unfairly penalizes a freshman or a sophomore making their first chance, that just because you're a senior doesn't mean you've had more opportunities. So it's an unbalanced, metric there. It's kind of like the Hodge when they use, your career standings. Well, the freshman could have had a better year, and it's the better wrestler that year, right? It's not a lifetime achievement award, is it? But that could be another show topic entirely, the Dan Hodge Trophy.
Yeah. And as Jason said earlier, of course, I'm a stats guy. I want to keep human beings out of all that, make it all numbers. But whoever devises a system could put a bias in there one way or the other. Okay, so back onto the men's NCAA D1. There's 7 qualifying tournaments. The ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, EIWA, MAC, Pac-12, and Southern. Okay. With this, okay, there are pre-allocated spots. You can see these up there on the board. There's a bunch of numbers in there, but 87% of the spots of the 330 are pre-allocated last year in 2022. Okay. In 2023, a little over 80% are already pre-allocated. That might change based on whatever formula. I've never seen how they make the sausage on that. I just know there is a formula.
So you're when you say they're pre-allocated now, because of course we're recording this in January, to Kevin bringing this up. So the knowledge is they'll get to the 3 criteria, coaches rank, RPI, and then win percentage. And they will get to about 27, 28 per weight. And so what the baseline may be, it may be 680 is your win percentage at 125, but there may not be, enough wrestlers at 141 that have a win percentage that have, 27 wrestlers, 28 wrestlers that have hit the same winning percentage. So that may be 65% your winning percentage there. So it is kind of flexible per weight class. It's not like everybody that's at 70%, that's the line, and it's like this. So they want to have 4 to 5 at-large bids nationally per weight class. So that's what, to the point about the number of pre-allocations per before we get to the at-large pool. And if you do not wrestle your conference tournament and you've allocated a bid, that bid goes back into the at-large pool too. Keep that in mind.
I think that's a really interesting point you just said. It's you don't get, because you qualified, you just qualify your conference for a bid. If you qualified 3rd in your conference and you take 12th, you're not going unless you get an at-large bid. Am I right?
There's a good chance, if you've qualified it, you go, if you're hit that bronze status, you're in the at-large pool. So I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. We're jumping cart way ahead of the horse here, Glenn. So what do we got next?
Okay. Next on slide 10, we see there's been a lot of talk, and a lot of people have asked me about all the defaults going on in qualifying tournaments. Okay. The big qualifying tournament, of course, is the Big 10. Okay. That's always the strongest wrestling thing. There were 21 defaults in the Big 10. 19 of them were matches where the defaulting wrestler had already qualified. either they made the semis and the top 6 or more went, or they went some round of place. Okay. So there were no examples of people wrestling about that they needed to win to place defaulting. Okay. Now, I went back in the Big Ten. That's 8% of all matches were defaults in the Big Ten. 30% of all placing bouts were defaults. That includes 2 in the championship finals. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that do for the sport? Well, the sport says the only thing that matters really is the NCAA. So, but other people like to go and watch these things. So if you look back the previous 2 years, in 2021, there was only 2% defaults of the Big Ten. And in 2020, there was 5%. So it's too small of a window to say, is it increasing? Maybe 2022 was an anomaly. We'll see after this year, but I don't think the defaults are going away. Then we look at all the other D1 men's tournaments. The EIWA in the placing bouts, 7.5% of those bouts were defaults. But of those 3 bouts that they were defaults, there was no bid on the line. Okay? Go next to the Big 12. The same thing happened. There were 5% of all the placing bouts were defaults. However, no bids were on the line on those defaults. The next one, the Pac-12, the same scenario. Okay. The next tournament, the ACC, the same scenario. Okay. The next tournament, the MAC, the exact same scenario. All the defaults and the placing bouts were not in bouts to determine if you're going to the Nationals. Okay. Then we get to the Southern Conference, which was the only conference qualifying tournament in all 3 divisions of the NCAA with no defaults. Okay. So next, let's go to total defaults in the men's D1 qualifiers. There were 25 defaults in the placing bouts. That's 11% of all placing bouts were defaults. However, if you look on the column very right on the bottom, 0% defaults in the qualifying bouts across all Division I. So there's a reason there are defaults some places and defaults and not in other places.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Glenn, I want to make sure we're uniform with our terminology. You're saying default is the match not being placed. The outcome that is called a default is not the same as a medical forfeit. So it's the medical forfeit is the result. This is the minutia, the semantics of it.
Thank you
we're
for
arguing. A default, an injury default is like you step on the mat, you get hurt, and you lose. You lose the bout. Medical forfeit, you are bailing out of the tournament. You have medicaled out. You do not step on the mat. You do not technically lose that bout. Your opponent gets his hand raised. They get win, but they don't actually get credit for a victory in the qualification standard because medical forfeits do not count for that metric.
Thank you for clearing that
up. Hence the vitriol on the message boards and Twitter and the social media about things in the regular season tournaments like the Scuffle in the Midlands and the Soldier Salute recently.
Yeah. I used the wrong terminology there. Clearly, I'm a numbers guy. I never passed too many English classes at William and Mary.
No, but basically you're saying it's a common term we use as default. I'm just saying the minutia. Let's not confuse. I'm making sure the folks at home listening or watching don't confuse the two terminology. Glenn's using default here because it's the match doesn't happen. He's saying default. Just making sure we're clear.
I'll try to use medical terminology in the future. Thank you for that correction.
I will. Medical terminology, doctor.
Yes.
This
we
is
need
not
a doctor
an
in
episode
it
of Quincy.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. I just used a reference for a show that was off the air before I was even born. What have you guys done to me?
Welcome to our world.
You're hanging out with the old guys, Jason. Okay. So the men's NCAA Division II championship has 180 wrestlers, 18 in each weight class. There's 6 regionals. So the top 3 at each weight qualify for the NCAAs. Okay. And guess what we found out? Okay. In those
What did we find out, Glenn?
In those third place bouts at all 6 regionals, okay, that would be 63rd place bouts. There are no defaults, okay. And in all the other regionals, there's default somewhere else. Excuse me, medical forfeits somewhere else. Okay. But not in the third place bout. Okay. Now, the next slide shows the men's NCAA Division III championships. It's the same scenario. 6 regions, top 3 in each qualify. And
what are we going to see in our third place bouts, Kevin? What do you think's going to happen?
0.
Look at that,
Oh,
Glenn.
I'm so surprised.
yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
It's a pretty amazing statistic, though.
Yeah.
You could have your arm falling off, and if there's a bid to nationals on the line, they're scrapping.
Yeah.
You're going. You're wrestling. Yep.
I do also think that's one of the things, well, I'm not going to forfeit out of the match that I need to get to nationals, whereas, you know, this is one of the things that we talk about, the regional versus the regional model Division II, Division III compared to the conference model Division I. And I also, again, want to caution our viewers and our fans, like, well, why don't we go to the regional model? And remember, if you remember the realignment episode or the renovation of Division I wrestling episode back this summer of 2022, the worry I always have with regionals at the Division I level is when you remove the conference affiliation from a sport, it gives those athletic directors that are looking to chop another reason to say, well, we don't sponsor the sport in the conference. So that is one of my big reasons against a regional model in Division I. However, this is a statistic that shows that, well, you want to eliminate those medical forfeits at the conference level. Well, look what Division II and Division III are doing. They're getting the guys to the show. Now, of course, there's the arguments that D2 and D3 don't get enough bids anyway, especially Division III, which has over 120 programs, and they get 180 wrestlers. Where Division I, we're going to be at 81 next year, and we're getting 330, which blows the whole formula out of whack in terms of percentage of participation. But that's another tangent about this process. So back on track with our forfeits and defaults in the placement matches here in Division III, Glenn.
Okay, so Kevin Hauser was right predicting that there were going to be 0 medical forfeits in the third place bouts all across all the 6 regionals in D3 last year. So on the next slide, you see a total composite of all 3 Division III levels. Okay, there's 19 qualifying tournaments. Okay, 74 defaults. And once again, Kevin, how many were medical forfeits in qualifying bouts? Kevin's holding up 0, and that's correct. Okay.
So it actually looks like he's holding up the diamond cutter from Diamond Dallas Page, but that's a different story entirely. Bang!
Bang.
3 people got that joke.
Yeah.
Including Kevin's son, Brian.
Yeah. So the next men's conference, of course, is the NAIA. Jason waxed eloquently on a lot of this earlier. There's 9 conference qualifying tournaments. We listed them there, and this goes to what Jason was saying about conferences versus regionality. They had 280 wrestlers there last year. This year, for the first time, there's going to be 28 per weight class. That's great.
And Glenn, I can speak on this a little bit more since I've been covering or working or announcing or broadcasting the NAIA championship since I want to say 2012. Been announcing it since 2016. So Mark Bouchard, the director of championships for the NAIA, he told me this year that they were going to go to 28 per, because we've had some situations, and you might remember this from the old qualification days before we went 33. There'd be a weight where you had 36, 37 in a weight. And if you went through the old brackets that the late Jay Hammond put out on WrestlingStats.com, you'd see, man, there were a lot of pigtails this one weight, and then there were buys in the first round in another, where conceivably you could have had a wrestler win 5 matches in a tournament and not place, and you could have a wrestler win 2 matches in a tournament and place. Weird, I know, right? Well, now you've got, of course, winning on the top side. You get a bye, then you win. Oh, you're in the quarterfinals. You lose. You win in the blood round. You're an All-American. Whereas you lose the pigtail, you're in for a long way back. You could win 5 and lose in the blood round, the round of 12. So that notwithstanding, that's the uniformity factor. Now, the NAIA, prior to their conference makeup, this is a little history lesson for you. They had one of the weirdest ways of qualifying. And this goes back to when they had 18, 19 teams. They needed to fill out brackets. They started entering more than one per weight. You could wrestle 12, 2 per weight class. That most people, I think, is common. I think they could even have gone 4 per weight if they wanted to back then. But typically you're going 2 in a weight class, and you qualified. If you were in a 32-man bracket and you placed in the top 8, no matter the size, no matter the type of tournament you were in, you qualified for nationals. So there were teams like Lindenwood, for example, when they were in the NAIA, could go to the Kaufman Brand Open in Omaha and place all their guys in top 8 in a weekend, or either be the freshman, sophomore division, or and they could have 16 guys. Boom, you've qualified for nationals week 1. And then they had these 4 regions where the champ would go. I'm a little less concrete on how you qualify through the regional process back then, but then they went to these conference models, and they do a good job at their affiliates. So there are schools that'll be like now we see the Wolverine Hoosier Athletic Conference was not a wrestling conference that long ago. Then they got a number of teams that said, okay, we've got it. The conferences, yeah, we'll sponsor it. Now there's some affiliates in there. So they've done my renovation model, for example, for Division I. This is where the NAIA has shown that this is how we do it and this is how it works. And they're a little bit more flexible. They're not worried about multimedia rights as much as the Pac-12 and the ACC and the Big Ten, the SEC, all battling over name recognition. They're like, all right, well, I'm in the American Midwest for here. We don't have it for women's wrestling, so we're going to go over to the Sooner and qualify like that. So the NAIA is now 9. They've got their allocations per conference. Then they get their conference wild cards, then their national at-large. So it's kind of a hybrid model of the old system we used to have in D1 and the new system we have. So they've kind of merged it around. And, of course, they're growing light years. I mean, again, I said they had 18, 19 schools 20 years ago. Now they're over 70-something and adding more each day.
Yeah, 78.
We'll talk about our geoducks from the last episode.
Yes.
the Evergreen State. So the NAIA, again, they're in Wichita this year. So that's how they go through things. And the women, they're going to have the same general model, even though they don't have as many women's conferences yet.
Quick question. They got 9 conferences and 28 wrestlers, but you say some of them are at large. So you're saying they have a high...
So, for example, say the Heart of America Athletic Conference is a pretty good conference. Okay. So, say they'll get 4 at this weight. So, similar to D1, they'll get 4 at 25. They'll get 5 at 33. They may get 3 at 41. So, then you've got all those bids allocated. And then, okay, there's this many spots left over. And then they save 10 at the very end for a national at-large. So, after all the 270 bids have been allocated, and then, okay, you get this many wild cards. And then, okay, there's 10 more that need to get in. That's where they'll come back on the very end.
So it averages top 3 per conference. Averages.
I don't want to say average because, like, the Mid-South is very, very good. The Heart of America is very, very good. The Great Plains is typically pretty good. And then we've got a lot of newer programs in the American Midwest, and the Appalachian just kind of took some of what the Mid-South used to have, because the Mid-South would pretty much take anything that was new in the Southeast. I'm like, yeah, they're an affiliate. And then the Appalachian decided to sponsor wrestling. So some of those all sports members came over there. And so the Mid-South and the Appalachians kind of almost like split the teams in the Southeast based on their conferences. So it varies per year too. One year you could get 1 per weight. One year you could just get the champ, or some years you've got 5 hammers at there, and you're flexible based on the coaches ranking that they put out.
So they do the same 3-prong program, RPI.
It's similar. It's similar. I don't think they have the crossover to do a full RPI. I think it's just based on a coach's rank, to be quite honest with you.
Okay. Interesting.
All right. And back to where I was. This show is spending more time on the data on the NCAA because it's easier to find, and we didn't want to overload everyone with too much. And I don't want the women to feel slighted. We're going to get to them in a second. But next month's show is all on women's wrestling. So I want them to know that. Okay. The NCAA women. Okay. Jason talked about the NAIA women at length there. The NCAA women, there's 4 regional qualifiers. In 2022, they were taking 5 at each weight class, I believe. And this year it's going to be 4 at each weight class.
Yeah, we've got Yeah, we got 4, and they will wrestle a true fourth. So for those unfamiliar with the true, it's if, I finished 4th and you finished 5th, but we didn't meet, you're going to wrestle for that 4th final spot.
Yep. And last year, there was 40 NCAA women's teams. Right now, announced, there's 82. Okay, just to put that in perspective, guys. That's just bizarre.
We had a lot of growth.
Yeah.
We had a ton of growth in 2022.
Yeah. And there might have been another one that announced when we were on this show. It's like the ticker tape in the old stock market. So,
literally every show we add another women's program.
Yeah.
So.
Of those 40 teams last year, 32 teams actually had people qualify, which is a great thing to think that many teams have that many good people. So you can have 15 wrestlers from one team go, maximum of 2 per each weight class. As you can see on the next slide.
Yeah, up to 15, yeah. So, and then, of course, there are some nuances with eligibility requirements, of course, Division II, Division III schools. Again, this is one division. So, during the emerging sports status, again, we're going to have this National Collegiate Women's Championship for the NCAA programs, again, as these teams fill out their roster. And for, the emerging sports status, to get to championship status, there's also benchmarks you have to hit. Number of competitions, number of wrestlers on your roster, number of wrestlers in those competitions. So, I've got a, X state university with women's wrestling. If, okay, well, we got three women on our team, and we wrestle 3 events. That's not going to cut it. So that's where it's important, again, to bring it back to the NWCA's growth model with like the Leadership Academy and stuff, is getting quality coaches and retain, recruit, and grow. And then this is one thing you foster the growth on the high school level. When those more high school girls state tournaments are going to happen, the field of potential women wrestlers at the next level is going to grow. And, college wrestling is growing a little bit faster than the high school girls side is in terms of availability of roster spots. So that's one thing you got to keep an eye on. Like, are we going to make sure we can get these spots filled? That's one thing about the emerging sports status. It's not like you snap your fingers and you get a championship. So it is a process. We have to make sure we don't screw this up as a sport. So there are rules in place to make sure we've got a firm product on in our programs to say, all right, well, keep an AD going, well, this didn't work. We're done. We're out. So that's one thing to also consider is, once we get a team, we got to support it. We got to put people on there. And that goes with the men's team too, like opportunities. Well, hey, it's not D1. I don't want to go. Go D2, go D3, go NAIA. That's the opportunity to wrestle and get an education too. So those are key points. So as we're off on slide 26 here.
Yes. So, we went over 27 and 28, Jason, already. So hopefully in 2024, it is an NCAA sport, women.
Right.
Okay. The NCAA have 9 different regional qualifiers, including one in Puerto Rico. Good for Jim Junta getting that. The actual tournament is in Puerto Rico this year. So they have both the men and the women. Jason, do you know better about how they qualify?
I don't, but it's typically this one's pretty standard. I think it's X number per placement per weight. I don't have any details on if they have any additional metrics, but I think that's just the old regional format. Okay, X amount per weight go. Typically, I'm not sure if they have any wild card process. Maybe we can put another call into Jim Junta again to see what's going on. So he likes to innovate and he likes to try things out and throw spaghetti to the wall and see what sticks. So that's the one thing. The NCAA could change from year to year without us even knowing, because they like to try new stuff.
Yes, they sure do.
Guy.
Yeah, they tried the alternative scoring method, and you can still do it if the two coaches agree. Now, we talked a lot, guys, about the conferences and stuff like that, and we've talked before about dual meets versus conference tournament, team versus individual. We will have a future show, okay, on what all this means and whether we should have an NCAA Division I dual meet national championship or not. We had that last month's show on the multi-divisionals, the shirt I have on here, okay, up in Louisville. Every group showed up but the men's D1, okay. It was a great turnout. We had 36 mats. It was a wrestler's dream weekend. It was a lot of fun. The I'd like to take my hat off to Dan Weaver and all the rest of the people at the NWCA for just running a great show. Nate Nas, Dr. Paquette, the whole group, Mike Moyer, of course. They did a great job. Okay. I called it the world's largest indoor cocktail party, even if there was no alcohol. It was a party scene. Okay. If anybody has
I've been at the outdoor cocktail party.
Yeah, the outdoor cocktail party. Feel free to contact us with any input you have. Another show. It's not going to be next month, but it'll be about the possibility of going that direction and what it all means with all our conference qualifiers and how it compares with football, basketball, etc. Okay, so as we do monthly, we're going to have our episode 17 Matt Cliff's notes. Okay. Number one, to sum up the show, people remember the NCAA championships more than the qualifiers or regular season. Number two, men's NCAA Division I championship is the biggest tournament of all year, including the Olympics if it is an Olympic year. Number three, we should have women at the same time, same place as the men in D1 championships. We'd be the only NCAA sport to do that. Now, of course, if women become a sport in 2024, it'll all still be in one. Okay. Number four, men's D1 qualify from a combination of pre-allocated spot and coaches at large bids. Men's D2 and D3 qualify 3 in each weight class. Okay. Number six, there were 74 defaults or 11% across all conference qualifiers in NCAA. None of these defaults were in placing bouts where you had to win to go to the NCAA. Number eight, only the MAC had no defaults of all 19 NCAA conference qualifiers across the three divisions. Number nine, basketball is not like this because in many conferences you must win to advance. There's no fifth, sixth, and seventh place games, and there's too much of a TV money. The Power Five would get in trouble for defaulting in the final. The NFL, we've already seen this, and the NCAA football, we could see it. But how many times did you ever see Tom Brady play in Week 17 for the Patriots? They already have things clinched. Okay. The next slide.
Played Week 17 for the Bucks, though.
Yeah, that's different. It's different.
I think we ought to add a question here for our listeners.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I mean, we spent about 8 slides going over defaults. And, you know, is it a good thing? It's obviously not a great thing. I mean, some of them are actual really injuries, but it's an interesting statistic that it never happens in a placing bout. What do listeners think? Is there a way we could mitigate this? I mean, I'm looking at that. Is there something we can do? And I don't know if there's a real good answer, but I think that's something to talk about.
And this is one I know this has been talked about, and you know the fans, if you guys want to chime in a little bit as per Kevin's suggestion here is, you know, people say, well, you should, you know, you're defaulting out, those medical forfeits should count as losses. Well, because you're trying to game the system. Well, and then on the flip side, well, what if a guy's legitimately hurt? He shouldn't be penalized for not wrestling. So one of the nuances to that is I think that the frustration with the medical forfeit situation is when it happens, it's the semifinal loss. And then I'm done. So you only take one loss. You don't get that triple dip, as they call it, you know, with a semi-slide, triple dip. Where, all right, then I lose in the consolation semifinals. Then I lose in the 5th place match. So in those preseason tournaments or those mid-season tournaments, like those 2 losses will drop your seed. If you're a 1 seed, let's use Colton Schultz as an example. Gets upset in Vegas, and he's medicaled out. So he did not continue on, not giving some other heavyweights that live in those consolation rounds the opportunity to wrestle him and get another win to help their process get through. You know, on that point, that, you know, not to single him out, you know, like I'm saying, oh, you're bad, but I'm using that as an example because that did happen. He didn't. So, and then I use it like at the Southern Scuffle where your Gardner Webbs of the world. They, you know, those programs need those matches, and those programs are living in the backside quite a bit. So they will come through, and they need to get those matches against those things. And we saw wrestlers were like taking two forfeits in the 3rd place match. Great, you were 3rd, but you get no credit for any of those wins to get to 3rd. I think that's a frustrating thing for the parties. Like, well, I'm in here wrestling, and you're not, so I don't get the credit. You're not only you're saving yourself, but you're screwing me in the process. So I get that, but if you get an injury default and then you drop down, you medical out. Okay, you take it. If you want to count that as loss, that's one. That's not two. So I think the issue is it's the healthy wrestler, the wrestler that gets to a certain spot, gets upset, or they get there and like, I'm pieced out, I'm done. I went to wrestle some matches, get some mat time, and I'm out. Like, it's the people that show up to tournaments. I want to watch, Spencer Lee's name has been dropped quite a bit in this type of stuff. And he did wrestle in the Soldier Salute. He did wrestle his teammate. He didn't forfeit out. So you showed up to want to see Spencer Lee. You got that. But how many times you show up and be like, I want to see, Keegan O'Toole's another number. I want to go to the Scuffle and see Keegan O'Toole and David Carr. Neither of them showed up. I mean, for various reasons. I mean, coaches and wrestlers, there's a laundry list of reasons why people don't go. And, but the point is like, then you start have to adjudicate, well, are you really hurt? And imagine you get a world where athletic trainers start arguing with people. He can go. Well, no, he can't go. He's not legitimately hurt. It's like, at some point, it's like, if you medical forfeit out, you should, were you healthy enough to enter the tournament to begin with? And then we're back to the chicken and the egg. Well, you didn't show up because they didn't want to lose. Protecting seed. It's painful.
I get it. Yeah. And I would just like to hear, I think it would be some interesting feedback. We might find out somebody might have a really innovative way to do this and will solve all the world's problems.
Yes. And if anybody does
all the world's problems, that's large. I'm here for that.
Yeah. Tweet us at NWCA MatStats. If with any information, this will be another show. Okay. There's just a promotion of the Grow Women's Wrestling there with the old guy running.
Got an orange shirt. I wonder what. Never mind.
Yeah. I took my hat and gloves off once it got above like 28 degrees after like 7 miles. And the reason for this selfless promotion is because the next month's show is on women's wrestling. We will explore the stats in women's college wrestling, show you where it all stands, and let you know. And just a quick thing right now, as of right now, which is January 16th, there are 127 announced women's teams in the NCAA and NAIA. Who would have ever thought of that? So we will see you guys. Same mat time, same mat channel. On behalf of my co-hosts, Kevin Hazard and Jason Bryant, I'm Glenn Gormley. See you February 15th, 3 p.m. Bye.